Between 7:30 and 9 a.m., 42 other communities are doing the same thing. They are having 2 presenters talk for 6 minutes, and then for 15 to 20 minutes, they will have a round of fiery questions. I have the esteemed honor of being the timekeeper, and I take that very seriously. Our first presenter is going to be Mark Lee.
Why was she looking at me so pointedly when she said that about timekeeping? She knows me pretty well. Good morning. Hopefully all of you got a little more sleep last night than I did, but we'll enjoy this hopefully together. I made a few notes because it's the only way I'll stay on course for these 6 minutes. Successful business, I think we can all agree, means identifying needs. And identifying the right needs and the solutions you're going to bring to the table, obviously, are pretty important in that conversation. We're in the senior housing and dementia care business. I'm not going to spend time talking about the details of that. If for any reason you have a need, or you know somebody who has a need and you want to talk with us, we'll be happy to do that other than during this session. Give you the facts first. In '98, we opened our first senior living community, a campus with assisted living, independent living, and licensed personal care in Paducah. 2 years later, we opened here in Madisonville, a campus consisting of independent living and assisted living. In 2006, we sold the Paducah operation. In 2012, we opened a 10-acre dementia care campus in Louisville, and we're currently working on early stages, but working on that next project up in Louisville, another campus, probably a focus primarily again on memory care. A little additional background to the facts. We count me down on time, if you will. I'm halfway through.
4 minutes, 35 seconds.
All right. We were back in the 80s. I guess Maria and my much better half, sitting back here by our son Carson. We're in this together. We started the company a good number of years ago now. We were living up in St. Louis. We got married in '88, and in '89, when my father moved to Paducah, he helped us see that there was a need there for some quality senior housing. And we began looking at it. In '93, we moved to Paducah to actually start working on that project. And raising that first $450,000 in equity capital was some pretty heavy lifting for newcomers to a community. Took a lot longer than we thought. We were doing well in St. Louis. I was a partner in a law firm. We lived in a 5,000 square foot house on a golf course, etc. We sold that, moved to Paducah, Kentucky, where I had to look it up on a map basically, because I graduated UK, but I didn't know about western part of the state. And we moved into a 900 square foot old apartment in Paducah, and we were all in, as they say, all in. Ate a lot of rice and beans for a few years. Part of what it takes for some of us. If you got family money, whatever, maybe it doesn't take that, but we didn't have that. Quick story. A fellow by the name of Kurt Jones, he and his wife lived a few doors down from us in that little apartment complex, a one-story deal. And Kurt had started his company a few years earlier in '88 in his parents' garage in Grand Chain, Illinois, where he grew up. And he had gone to school and gotten a microbiology degree, and came up with a process involving nitrogen to freeze ice cream into little pellets. You ever heard of Dippin' Dots? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you're probably familiar then. I mean, they were living in that same little apartment, you know, just, I don't know, 4 doors down from us or something. And all in like we were, and we became friends. And now, you know, they've opened up their South Korea production facility to meet their Asian market, and you know, it's it's pretty incredible what they've done. So you never know where entrepreneurs are going to come from, and banding together. You know, I kept looking over at Kurt and thinking, anytime we thought about giving up, I thought, we're not giving up, he isn't. So, you know, we feed off each other, which is, I guess is why we roll out of bed on Wednesday mornings and cover this, right? Our core business is pretty capital intensive. We try to build pretty nice buildings, and so more than a lot of businesses, ours are pretty capital intensive. That was our largest single challenge as a result. Our first equity raise, we've done 3 private equity offerings. Being an attorney, I was able to save a few shekels rather than having to hire a law firm to do the private equity offering and make sure that you were in securities laws compliance. But since '97, we've done 3 private equity offerings, and we've raised a total of $2.3 million in capital. We leveraged those funds on the different projects by borrowing an additional $10.7 million. And all but $200,000 of those borrowed funds were either conventional loans or secondary market funds that were backed by federal guarantees, which is kind of a nice way to go if you can access that. No personal guarantees. I think we had $100,000 in one deal from an ED loan up in Louisville, and another $100,000 was a loan from one of our investors. Some lessons learned. 6 minutes?
6 minutes.
All right, very good. Well, hopefully we'll get to some of the rest of this through questions. Maria.
What are some of your lessons learned?
Well done.
Yeah, if there's a reason we're at all successful, you just heard from her. One of them is do your homework first. We were out trying to raise capital, and I've been a litigator. I mean, I had started getting into some business transaction work and representing some businesses, but I'd cut my teeth trying murder cases and robbery and rape, and and both as a criminal defense lawyer and as a prosecutor. So I didn't have a whole lot of wealth of experience on how you talk to bankers. Sorry if I'm mispointing at any. We got a bunch of them, and thanks for the support of the banking community. They're great here, and all of them are great here in this community. Do your homework, surround yourself with an extended team that can help you fill in the blanks on what you don't know. It's critical. We now have a consulting company that consults with senior housing providers in some healthcare across the Commonwealth, and we became the consultants that really wasn't around here in Kentucky in the early days of assisted living. We saw a need, and there were some other people spurring us on as they saw our company, our little company, develop. And I guess being an attorney and having helped write the assisted living statute and having helped work with the state develop the assisted living regs for Kentucky back in the 90s, late 90s, I guess we were in a particular place where we could bring some things to the table for the developing assisted living community of providers here in Kentucky. We became the consultants that we didn't have and wished had been around back when we were making all the mistakes that could possibly be made. And we learned from those and didn't make too many of them twice. So that was one of them.
What was your biggest mistake?
Oh, goodness. The first one that springs to mind was trying to ramp up on the expense side too conservatively. Our first campus down in Paducah, we tried to really hold down our overhead costs. And when you've your revenue base is slow to build, obviously you got to watch that. You've got to. The flip side of that is we found ourselves working ourselves out of a hole because we started off too spare on the people side. You know, we didn't put that receptionist in at the beginning. We didn't put in a full-time activity person. And that, you know, that's relevant to our business, but whatever your business is, I think there's a lesson there. You got to strike that balance between running yourself out of capital, out of cash too soon, versus being so tight that you don't have a smooth rollout, you don't have a smooth operation from the get-go. That was one lesson learned. Another, like I said before, is do your homework before you go in and show your rear to bankers or investors and kind of have to regroup and start over again. We went through that in Paducah. Thankfully, the banking community there was, they very nicely taught us some of the lessons we needed to learn. We didn't make that mistake as we rolled on down the pike. Although I will say on the capital side, the deal without going into a lot of detail, the deal up in Louisville, which was our biggest one, we had to raise $1.35 million for that, borrowed about 4.7, and our investors were all passive investors. The only people signing on the bottom line were Marie and myself and our operations partner up in Louisville. And none of us had the kind of balance sheets that bankers want to see on a deal like that. So we had to cobble a deal together, some SBA involvement, etc. The bottom line is, though, I had significant conversations with 21 banks before we got the yes, and that 21st bank had previously told us twice on that deal, no. We just had to keep retooling and figuring out how to enhance the credit, etc. So you got to be tenacious, obviously. Sorry, I think I rambled on that one. Other questions? John?
When you went looking for private investors, how did you get into that community? I mean, not everybody has friends that, you know, say, I'll write a check and get into that, but
Yeah.
where'd you sort of...
Great question. We were new to Paducah. I mean, my dad was serving church as an interim pastor after my mom had died, and so he wasn't super well known in that community. He's the one that helped identify the need and was one of the partners in the deal early on, but he didn't have lots of money. I got on the chamber board of directors. I got on the board of United Way. I mean, we got active in a church, and not for reasons of wanting to raise equity, but to truly get involved in the community, make it our home. And it took time. I mean, it took a lot of time. I thought we were going to go down there because we had such a great idea, and we're reasonably smart people. We'd raise that $450 real quick. Well, didn't work out like that. It took about 10 times longer than what I had thought it was going to take. And I ended up hanging my shingle to practice law as a solo practitioner down there for a while just to keep that above water, to be honest with you. I hadn't planned to do that. Had to get licensed in Kentucky to get I'm licensed in 3 states. Well, got licensed in Kentucky to mother of necessity. But you know, just meeting people. When we came to Madisonville, we had a building we could point to that had been successful in Paducah. And y'all know Bob Morris. Of course, he was the publisher of the Messenger back when we were coming here. I met Bob because his mother-in-law, I guess, lived in Paducah. We went to the same church. I said, Bob, can you give me some names of people up here? Because we hadn't moved here yet, looking to raise some capital here, as well as bringing some folks with us who were investors in our first deal. He said, hey, let's talk about that. He said, I got a chamber function to go to. Walk with me down the street. When we went walking into U.S. Bank, where the chamber after hours deal was being held. Of course, you know, he's this tall. He dropped that arm around me as we went walking into that. I didn't think about the fact at the time, and I don't know if he really planned that or not, but I had some instant credibility as he was introducing me to people. And 2 or 3 people that I met through that real low-key way of him just saying, hey, here's a friend of mine. He wasn't promoting my business. He wasn't saying you need to invest. There wasn't anything like that. But he did me a real favor. So networking, but in a very personal way. Other questions?
Why would you decide to go to that field?
I'm
Why
sorry?
would you decide to go into that field? What made you decide that's what you want to do?
When I first started practicing law, more years ago than I like to admit, 77, started practicing in Dayton, Ohio. And my father, who, as I've said, was a minister, is a minister. He's still living. He's visited one of our meetings. He had gone back to school when he was now young. He was younger at the time than what I am now. He was in his 50s and had gone back to school and gotten his second master's degree in the study of gerontology, the study of aging. And he started serving a continuing care retirement community in Dayton that had over 500 residents. And I would go up 2 or 3 times a month, have lunch with him. And over a period of time, I got to know his department heads. I got to know some of his residents. And I started looking at this. I started seeing the toll, even at a young age, that litigating, you know, the stress and the pressure. I started looking around and seeing older attorneys who had been at that grind for decades, and there were a lot of them that were on marriage number 4, and maybe if they weren't in rehab, they needed to be, etc., just from the stress and pressure. And I thought, okay, I'm a strong young buck, but, you know, am I really better than some of these other people? Am I going to hold up for decades doing what I'm doing? So I started thinking about business, and I thought, you know, he's doing some great work. That's pretty cool. There's some real needs here. It's a more positive. I was seeing the underbelly of life. He was seeing some good things and getting some really cool rewards out of it. And that's kind of what led us into it. When he, after my mother's death, when he went to Paducah and saw a need there, because there just wasn't at the time quality senior housing there, he called me up one day and just said, we need to talk. His vision initially was a not-for-profit and totally different than where we ended up. Totally different. And that's the other thing. Be ready to turn on a dime. Be ready to be innovative. Be ready when you hit that wall to say, okay, how are we going to work our way around that? Yesterday, the jobs announcement that B&K would make were on the front page, and that's cool. What is it, 39 new jobs, et cetera. Like Jamie said this morning, we're getting a bunch of singles and single hits, and that's great. Part of his message was you know, he told a story of how one of their markets dried up, and they came up with a solution as opposed to allowing themselves to remain at that stage. And now it's gone national. You need what you need. So, other questions? Rick?
Yeah. How did you decide the size of your facility for each different area?
We did some market research. On that first one, we kind of went to school on another company because we reached out to them. Actually, that's not quite right. We had secured an option on a piece of property, and another company came and that was already in the business and tried to make a play to get in front of us on that property. And they were trying some things that I considered to not be very ethical. So we had a little conversation about that, and I was able to get their attention that they probably didn't want to go down that road. apparently we were able to do that without, and helping them and doing some studies throughout this whole region, Arkansas, Illinois, Ohio, etc., Kentucky, and looking at markets for them. And in the process, I think they thought we knew more than we did at the time. We didn't represent that, but I guess they thought we did. And we learned a lot from them in the process. We called up people who had been successful and were leaders in the National Trade Association, Assisted Living Federation of America, and said, we're getting started in this business. We're getting started in an area where you don't have any facilities. Can we come spend the day with you, sit at your feet and learn? Will you talk to us? Will you help us? To a person, they said yes. We went to Georgia, we went to Alabama, we went to Columbus, Ohio. And so we weren't bashful about saying, gosh, we got so much to learn. We're passionate about this. One way or another, we're going to succeed. We want to be excellent providers. Will you help us? And they said, yeah. So, we looked at the demographics. We looked at what other people were doing and had been successful. And ended up then being the go-to people for doing, and still are, for doing market studies here in Kentucky for other providers. And one of the key issues is, how many units will the market carry, and how many should be in each room type, et cetera. So, Carol?
Shortly after I graduated from college, I remember hearing the statistic about how by the year 2014, there will be 2 retired people for every person working. At the time, it was flip-flop. And, we all were gearing toward the senior community and elder care and anything to do with the elderly. Is that trend continuing, and what is the financial, being that the economy has kind of wobbled around a little bit, what is the financial outlook for that? Are there still going to be seniors with money, or?
Yeah, I mean, everything I'm seeing, everything I'm reading is the answer to that is yes. I mean, there's a huge transfer of wealth from generations that's currently in progress. The bankers could probably speak to that better than I can. I can tell you from our experience in this community, we're full. I mean, I think we're 95 or 98% occupied. We stay pretty full most of the time. Anytime your average age of your customer is about 85, you're going to have some dips, obviously, but we stay pretty full. And while this community, I'm kind of glad that we're in Kentucky and not in Arizona or Vegas or California or some of the supposed hotspots for retirement, because they took some of the greatest hits on the economy. From what I see in the trade publications, they took some of the worst hits in our industry as a result. But we seem to exist. We don't have quite the highs, we don't have quite the lows, and that's not all bad. A little more stable environment. So we're all private pay, and so if you think anybody would have been seriously hit by that, you would have thought we would have been. We haven't really seen that so much because it's pretty need-driven. That's part of why we went into memory care, though, because that's even more need-driven, certainly, than independent living or even assisted living. I'm getting a little maybe too specific to our particular industry, but hopefully even when we venture into those areas, hopefully there's still some transportable, translatable concepts. Other questions? How are we doing on time, I think?
2 minutes. What are your future plans?
Well, as I said, we're working on another project. We'll see where it goes up in Louisville. We've identified a project close to the Highlands that is pretty exciting. It's a former Catholic school, and it's got a historic building on it that's gorgeous. That we're looking at. We were actually approached by the contracting firm that was one of the major players in building Papa John's Stadium, they built hospitals. They did the retrofit construction on our 10-acre campus up in Louisville. And the owner of that company actually is one of our passive investors, and is the one that made a loan to us as well. We developed a close relationship with them, and a couple of the key players in that company sought us out and said, we found a deal here that we want to put together, and would you guys bring the expertise in what you do, and we'll bring what we bring, and look at doing some high-end loft-style apartments in the old historic structure, and in what was the convent portion where the nuns lived, look at doing memory care. So we'll see how that all pieces together. We had to be in line. So somebody else had an option on that, and we thought we were out in the cold on that because we weren't going to make the play that the people down in Paducah tried to do with us. And it turns out that they went by the wayside, couldn't put their deal together from a financial perspective. And so it looks like we're in line now to perhaps be able to line that out. Marianne?
Quick question.
Uh-huh.
You're one of the great people that put this together and made the commitment to be here every Wednesday. So what are you getting out of 1 million cups, and why do you think it's important?
As I said, down in Paducah, that Kurt Jones connection, connecting with other like-spirited people is energizing. It can be inspiring. I learned so much from other people. The day that I start feeling like I've got all the answers, Maria just put me in the box and lower me. And she will, because I'm well insured. That synergy with other people is so important. And I guess I'll piggyback on that and say, get back to your community. This is a way that we can all give back. Yeah, I learned from you all. Hopefully a few things that I can offer up, may help others. And but whether it's serving your community in one way or another, whether it's through a civic club, through United Way, through your church, through running for elected office, whatever it may be, give back to your community. Don't do it for business reasons. Those will naturally come, I think. Do it because it's the right thing to do, and because, and this is one of those things that I see it as helping grow our own entrepreneurs over a period of years. And from an ED perspective, Gerald, as we all know, if we can have 10 new startups that end up having 10 employees, we've got 100. And if they're homegrown, they're a lot less likely to perhaps pull up stakes and go out of the country or go to that next location where they can get some new incentive. And man, we need those buried plastics. We need those major job announcements, and thank God for them. I mean, that's so important. But if we can grow our own and create this climate of entrepreneurship and being supportive, how cool is that? And then if we can bring guys like this sitting behind Chris there, Carson Lee, back after he probably goes away and gets his education, and where they say, Madisonville is a great place to live, work, we're on the right track. I think I've used my time.
You're up.
Thank you.